Okay guys, Mark Allen, BHSpringSolutions LLC, BHSpringSolutions.com, and in this session of High Power University, we're now getting to the next generation of high power pistols and what was going on, actually, that was going on at FN in the 80s, and it would have been this guy right here in the picture. And I'm not intending to make this a BH commercial for my partner and me, but this is my partner and me with Leon Hubert in Liège, Belgium, at his shop there. And Leon is now a design partner with BHSpringSolutions, as well as a business partner with BHSpringSolutions. And it was during this Mark III period that we start to see elements of the high power that Dieudonné Save had designed start to be redesigned or reinvented. And we're going to start to kind of illustrate that here with our pictures of the, now we would have to make an argument for 3 designers because of some of the things that were happening at FN with respect to the high power pistol. What we're going to do, if you'll indulge this, is we're going to move John Browning over here, and I think it's going to start to become clear why here in a moment. But we have Mr. Browning, really substantially responsible for the high power's original design of frame, slide, barrel, and in the 1927 Grand Rendement over here with Mr. Browning, we have the trigger return spring, trigger lever. This was in the 1927 Grand Rendement and the same kind of design form and doing the same thing. Firing pin, the firing pin retaining plate, which really Dieudonné Save copycatted off of John Browning's 1911, had fracture problems, and it was really the Leon Hubert era that perfected that part with MIM. So that kind of really sort of goes to Mr. Browning and Leon Hubert, who finally got that a part where it has no reputation for fracture to come in. Okay, and the safety levers, the safety lever for the high power and the engagement of it, this really got more 1911-esque, if you will, and easier to manipulate when Leon Hubert and that generation of designers redesigned it. And they added the ambidextrous safety. By the way, the original 1927 Grand Rendement was absolutely an ambidextrous safety. So really, Leon at this point and company at FN were really restoring elements of the safety assembly, and it's the fact that it's ambidextrous back. This is bringing it back to the standard of the 1927 Grand Rendement. And then, of course, the sear lever itself and the sear spring, this brought back an element of some drop safety to the high power pistol design, back to the standards of what John Browning did in the 1927 Grand Rendement, and positively positioned the sear lever. Very, very important. So really, Leon Hubert brought this element of the high powers fire control group. He brought this right back and made it with characteristics and design qualities that are on par with what John Browning created in terms of what they do. So we're more inclined to now put those parts and make those John Browning parts that were then in the P35 design, arguably perfected by Leon Hubert. So out of the Mark III high power pistol anyway would come the components that I just pulled off of the table. Those would disappear from Dieudonné Save's responsibility because those have in effect then been replaced. Now came along the SFS system at one time. Would have made a great next generation operating system for the high power pistol. The SFS system brought along a lot of upgrades and improvements for the high power pistol. Here's one. See how the meat of my hand. It doesn't even come close to this hammer. Even when the slide comes back and pushes the hammer a little bit further down, no way I'm close to hammer bite there. The SFS system solved Diodone Save's design weakness of the high power's tendency to draw blood on its users by hammer bite. Leon Hubert also redesigned the high powers hammer assembly. By redesigning it, he enabled the high power pistol to be carried in this position of readiness, with the hammer in this position forward, not hammer back like this, which is really hard to clear out of clothing, by the way, but with a hammer position like this. And when you de-safety, the hammer cocks and you're ready to fire at that point. The SFS system goes back on safe just that easily. This was Leon Hubert's answer to double action, single action, and all the rage that it was. And when he designed this, he addressed some other things that Diodone Save had done, and Leon redid them. Not only the operating system did he make that very, very 21st century, on the way to doing that, he redesigned the safety levers again as part of the SFS system, that operating system where you saw the safeties cam up, by themselves. So that was a Leon Hubert design work. The extended slide stop that's integral with the high powers SFS system that Leon designed is of the type that it can be removed with the slide forward. So when you see me with the slide forward like this, disassemble just as easily as what you just saw, and I don't have to lock the slide back anymore. I can't lock the slide back with a safety that does not work in the conventional way. It only works when I push the hammer forward, just as you saw. So it necessitated that the slide stop be more easily removable in the slide forward position. This is, again, fulfillment of John Browning, and the best firearm is the simplest firearm. Makes takedown and disassembly much simpler, and it puts the slide stop much more in reach of the thumb, which could have been considered a design weakness of the original slide stop. So the original slide stop idea was, I believe, a 1911 idea, but this would be John Browning and definitely Leon Hubert about the extended slide stop. So we'd pull the slide stop out of Diodone Save's pile there. Leon Hubert also redesigned the high powers sear spring. That's traditionally this spring. By doing so, he made it to where this sear spring can be installed and uninstalled without taking apart anything in the fire control group whatsoever. So we're going to pull the sear spring back from Diodone Save's pile, and that'll go into Leon Hubert's pile. Leon makes two sear springs, one heavier and more intense than the other. This can help you tune your trigger brake weights. So those definitely go in Leon Hubert's side. Then the hammer assembly for the SFS, which enables the SFS functions. That again is the SFS component. That's Leon Hubert's doing. That would take the original hammer assembly out of Diodone Save's spot over here. So, and the SFS sear. Now this is kind of a cool thing, because you remember we were looking at how Mongo that original sear is, and you can see the difference in these. This is the SFS sear, and this is the engagement surface here for the hammer tooth, and you see the much more modest size. Well, that much more modest size means that it's easier to clear the hammer tooth, and you get more predictable trigger brake, cleaner, crisper, and lighter trigger brake with this amount of an engagement surface. It was one of the benefits of the SFS system, and that again was Leon Hubert. Now that of course left some room in the frame, and that's what made the one additional part in the SFS system, the return lever. And the return lever, this is part of your SFS functions and part of what makes the SFS functions happen. So these parts would also be Leon Hubert's responsibility. We've already taken the sear out. We're going to take the firing pin retaining plate out of Dieudonné Save's pile as well. The Mark III extractor, we call it, because it has a place here. This is where that new sear lever spring would go in through the frame. So that's why that curve is there. This really belongs in Leon Hubert's corner and Dieudonné Save's corner as well. So we're going to go ahead and take the extractor on out of the picture. So this is a different look at the whole, where did my high power come from? If you have a high power now today that is a Mark III design and you have the SFS system on it as an example, and if you have by chance removed your magazine disconnect out of your high power, most likely the extent of what Dieudonné Save designed into your particular high power pistol would amount to the ejector, all the pins, like everywhere, and the extractor spring and the recoil spring guide rod. If you haven't already noticed, the high power pistol and the changes that it underwent and the changes that were being contemplated at FN and the SFS system and so forth, all of these things really did a couple of things. They brought the high power pistol design back closer with more capabilities, more safety elements, function elements, brought the design back closer to John Browning's 1922 Grand Rendement. And frankly, when we see, the Mark III upgrades, when we see the SFS system, when we see, the way they redid the barrel cam lug and the frame pin, or the barrel cam through the frame on the aluminum frame high powers, what we see is this gradual evolution that is restoring elements that were present in the 1922 Grand Rendement, but were ultimately lost on its way to becoming the high power, or the P35, as Dieudonné Save brought it in. Okay, we're going to be getting close to wrapping up this whole journey through the high power pistol. And we've got at least one more session to go before we've completely wrapped up in what we're talking about now. I'm Mark Allen, BH Spring Solutions LLC, and BHSpringSolutions.com.